website out there that was selling actual GMAT questions where someone had gone into the test with a camera and photoed a bunch of questions, and crazy stuff like that happens from time to time. But yeah, it's something where I haven't really seen much in terms of people blogging about the GMAT. We try to Twitter about the GMAT every once in a while on EduFire. Yeah, DJ says Koichi should write one. Spare time. How to get a 200 on your GMAT. Yeah, it's definitely there's definitely different ways you can play that one. Koichi, I'm going to bring you onto to video.
Right. So kind of along, excuse me, kind of along the same line. So is there an actual like lowest score possible? Like I think for the SAT, like it's hard to get a 0, and I think the lowest score was like around 200 or so. Is it kind of the same with GMAT? So like it's not necessarily starting at 0. It's kind of starting at like 100 or 200 for your score.
Yeah, it's a good question. So it does start at 200. So you can't get a 0. The lowest score is 200. They claim that the average score is 500. Having said that, I rarely see people who've scored, and I hope I'm not going to offend someone out there, but I rarely see people who've scored under a 500. So, you know, if I had to think about it anecdotally, Ron says he bets he could do it. If I had to think about it anecdotally, like I think that the average is probably really higher than 500, but, you know, I mean, they claim that 500 is the average score. And I'm going to go back because Pre's had a couple good questions in the chat pod. Pre asks, do you think that's also a good test for people that don't speak English as a first language to test their level? The GMAT is. I think that the more common test that you'll see for people who don't have English as a first language is the TOEFL. And I don't know exactly right now where it's at with business school admissions, but I do think that some admissions committees do require the TOEFL to be submitted if you went to school in a place where English wasn't the primary language. I don't know that for a fact though, so you have to do some research on that. But the TOEFL is more. That's what the TOEFL is mostly designed for. It's designed for people who didn't have English as a native language to basically assess their abilities. Now, the reason why the GMAT has the analytical writing assessment and people still ask for the TOEFL is that they're a little bit different in nature. But having said that, they're really, the purpose of both of those things is essentially exactly the same. And Pri also asks that you know, it's a good idea, or says it's a good idea to try to learn or teach someone on the language you're learning in order to check how proficient you are. Absolutely. I think this is one of the most underrated forms of studying is, you know, once you start to learn something, immediately go back and teach it to someone else. They always say the best way to learn something is to teach it. I know personally when I've taught the GMAT, you know, I taught a class at the University of Minnesota. I've taught for Microsoft for a while. I always learn way more teaching a class than I ever do sitting in a class. So if you have the ability, you know, heck, you know, once you get sort of good, you can just teach a GMAT class right here on EduFire to people and improve that way. Make sure you're pretty good at that point though. You know, that's something that's really, really important to try, is to see if you can and teach somebody else something, even if it's just, you know, a brother or a sister or, you know, a spouse or whatever. Just teaching them some of the basic principles, even if they don't care. You know, sit them down and be like, hey, for half an hour I want to explain this to you. Does this make sense? Just by verbalizing some of the things that you're learning, that can be really, really helpful. Great. Any more questions that any of you have? I'm going to go ahead and share the PowerPoint presentation. So if any of you are interested in having that, I'll put that up here for you to grab. And if you do have any additional questions, about the GMAT, you're free to contact me. You can get a hold of me through EduFire. I'm always happy to answer additional questions. Something that I am going to be doing in the future is probably running some more of these classes. So I'd love to get any feedback as to things that you'd like to see. So, if you'd like to see maybe a class on data sufficiency, or maybe a class on sentence correction, maybe just a full-blown 10-week class on the GMAT, I'd be happy to pull those out in the future. Might take a little bit of prep time on my part, but this is actually really fun for me. I haven't taught a class like this. Well, I've never taught an online class like this, but I haven't taught a class for a while, and I really enjoy doing this. It's a blast for me. So if anybody has any feedback along those lines, please feel free to let me know. You should be able to grab the PowerPoint presentation now. If you look at the file share pod in front of you, just click on that and click on Save to My Computer. Also, too, if you have any feedback about tonight's class, let me know. We did record tonight's class, so we are going to make this available after the fact. So people who weren't able to watch this, if you know of anybody who was looking forward to being here tonight but couldn't attend for whatever reason, we'll make this available to them. But otherwise, I just want to thank all of you for coming tonight. This was fantastic. I really enjoyed this. And again, if you have any other questions in the future, please feel free to let me know, or any other feedback. John Williams has a class in German right now that's starting, so if you'd like, you can hop on over to that. Just go to edufire.com/classes. And then Koichi actually has a class in Japanese coming up at 7 o'clock tonight. We have a record, like 75 students have signed up. So edufire.com/classes. All right, well, thanks everybody. Really appreciate you coming tonight, spending your time here, and I will see you on the site soon.